right, guys, so today let's go over Greece, which is in the Mediterranean region of Europe. All right, so a lot of the ideas that come from Greece serve as the foundation for American and European ideology. The same thing can be said of Rome, which we'll get to in the next PowerPoint. But what you need to know about Greece is that due to its geography, Greek cities developed isolated from each other, so they all ended up being organized into city-states, what's also called a polis. These were self-reliant, independent governments that were pretty much viewed as their own country. So they're all independent. They're all going to be different from each other. Athens pretty much serves as the nerve center for Greek trade. You have the Mediterranean sea lanes or the Hellenistic trade routes, which start with the Phoenicians, which remember them from period 1 with the alphabet and all that. They started trading for food and raw materials. These routes that the Phoenicians developed that are later adopted by the Greeks and the Romans connected Egypt, Nubia, and all around the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, Arabian Sea, and eventually over to the Indian Ocean. They learn a lot of stuff from Arab and Indian sailors throughout their contacts. And some of the things that they're particularly going to trade are olives, grapes, wine, spices, things like that. So when we think about Greece, two of the big city-states that we think of are Athens and Sparta. These are probably the two most well-known city-states, and they're going to come into conflict with each other quite a bit. So Sparta was very militaristic. They started military training at the age of 7, and you had to stay in the military until you were 60. They do have slaves. All of their citizens were equal, men and women. And compared to Athenian women, Spartan women had more freedom. They were allowed to be educated. They could own property. They could go out in public. They weren't secluded. They organized themselves into an oligarchy where they had 2 kings that ruled, and their king was viewed as like the supreme priest. So they're also a theocracy. Athens, like we talked about in class, was more of a direct democracy where all male citizens could vote all free males who were considered citizens had the right to vote on every issue. Athens is more known for its intellectual achievements. They're known for their golden age ruler Pericles, who would set up laws and courts and the right of people to assemble, things like that. Women in Athens had no rights. They were secluded in their homes. Upper class women had to be veiled and accompanied by a male guardian if they went out in public. So the tradition in the Middle East of having women veiled actually starts in Greece, is adopted by the Byzantines, and then later the Ottomans, and then other cultures in the Middle East. But that kind of all starts with the Greeks. Greece does get into 2 big conflicts. One of them are the Persian Wars, in which Greece has to kind of unite and set aside their differences to defeat the Persian invasion. And then you have the Peloponnesian War, which is Athens and Sparta, which Sparta wins. Greece is known for its 3 big philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They go in order, so if you remember SPA, that helps you remember the 3 philosophers. So a little bit about each one of those. Socrates is known for all of his questioning, and his quote, that he's really known for, is "the unexamined life is not worth living." So he kind of would encourage people to ask questions about everything because that's the way that you learn. And ultimately for this, he was executed for corrupting the youth of Athens. Plato was a student of Socrates. Some of the things he's known for, he came up with the allegory of the cave, and he's known for his work, The Republic. Plato really didn't like the idea of democracy, and this is basically what the Republic is about. He preferred this ideal society that was composed of workers, warriors, and philosopher kings. So he was very anti-democracy. Aristotle was a student of Plato. He wrote Politics. He's going to go on to be the tutor and teacher of Alexander the Great. And he's known for his ideas on ethics, like doing everything in moderation, and empiricism, which is, learning through observations. As far as Roman culture, I've already touched on trade earlier. Rome does develop the Olympics. Okay, they have their religion. which was polytheistic with all the gods and all these religious cults and the myths and all that kind of stuff. And then you have slavery in Greek society. Primarily, slavers were debtors. In Greece, slaves were also sold as trade goods. So, in some cases, they were considered property. So, this is called chattel slavery, which is the kind of slavery you see later in the Americas. But all slaves were regarded as private property of their owners. And in some cases, slaves could end up earning their freedom and, starting businesses and things like that. After the Persian and Peloponnesian Wars, the Greek city-states are left in a weakened state, which is going to allow Philip II of Macedonia, which is like on the northern edge of the Greek world at this point, to come in and start conquering the city-states. By 388, he's able to bring Greece under his control. He's later executed. So at the age of 20, his son Alexander, later the Great, takes over. And Alexander started to go on and conquer places like Ionia, Anatolia, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and he's able to go conquer Persia, which at this point was under the Achaemenid dynasty. He founded lots of cities all throughout his empire, named a lot of them about themselves, named after himself. Sorry. He makes it to India before his troops decide they want to go back home. When he is going all throughout this empire, he's helping to spread Greek culture. And so this is what we call the Hellenistic era. And so this is the spread of Greek culture, including Greek language, architecture, Greek philosophy, their myths, all of this stuff east to Asia. And this is going to be Alexander's legacy after his death at the age of 33. So when he dies, there is no heir. His empire is split up into three. Later, they get conquered by Rome, who adopts a lot of Greek culture. But it's not just Rome who adopts Greek culture. Like I said, you see a big Greek influence in South Asia, and this is called like Greco-Buddhism. You see it in art. Like a lot of temples in India have Greek-style columns, and they also have statues of Buddha in Greek clothing. So ultimately, when we talk about Alexander, this is the legacy that he leads. And so just remember that Greece was never really a unified empire. They were city-states until they get conquered ultimately by Alexander the Great.